Shall we start again? Now we can see that since the VOC started to rule over Taiwan, they also issue a currency for better trade. And these are the coinage that issued by the VOC. And as we say, that the Dutch started to import, well, to invite, to allure coolies, workers from China, and mainly from Fujian province, the coastal area, to Taiwan. And some of them will actually stay here forever, and the other stay here for a while, and make some money and just went away. We have to notice one thing, that from the 17th century on, there is a huge increase of population in China. There's hardly any kind of fatal disease on a large scale, blood death or this kind of thing. And because of the introduction of some different crops, like nowadays we can see the corn, the potatoes, as well as some other plants from Latin America were actually introduced not only to Europe but also to East Asia. And this kind of crops helped to ease the demand of staple food, and therefore the population increased enormously, and society then started to face the overpopulating problem. Some of them will actually emigrate. One of the destinations will be Southeast Asia. As we said, there was a very convenient monsoon for the giants with the sails, was really reachable for them from any port of from the southeast coastal area of China to nowadays Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, for example. And some of them actually arrived to Taiwan. And for a lot of people, it was actually very easy for them now to travel back and forth from Southeast Asia and China. So you must have heard about the legend of the Zheng He, a eunuch that led a fleet to Southeast Asia. And people said he even reached as far as Africa. His fleet was actually 200 years earlier than any other Western fleet to sail around this area. So Chinese, that's why we can see that the overpopulating problem made the Chinese to come to Taiwan. Some of them stayed here, some of them went home. Those who stayed here will face then a problem, marriage, or say to how to start a family. Because as you see, that most of the immigrants will be young males. You have seen the films of about the cultivation or early development of America. You see most of the immigrants, travelers, they were actually young males. And they arrived to Taiwan. When they want to settle down, to find a woman to settle down, they have no such opportunities to meet any, because in their society or in their surroundings there is a shortage of female, and therefore the intermarriage started, like to marry the local Aboriginal girls. And some of the Aborigines, they learned a lot of living skill from the Chinese, and they found it might be easier to settle down than to hunt around. And therefore, some of the Aborigines became mingled with the Chinese, and such started a new type of living or new type of culture in Taiwan. Later on, there's a term called Pingpu Chinese, or which meant actually the civilized barbarians, 熟番. For the Chinese, we used to call the Aborigines barbarians, fan. This term is also used by the Japanese. Nowadays, of course, is a insult and full of discrimination and can never be used again. But at that stage, 17th century, it was very normal. And later, I show it on the later slides. So, the Dutch military started to concentrate at a fort and built up a castle called Zeelandia. The Zeelandia, actually, Zeeland is a province in the Netherlands. Nowadays, you still have the, for example, New Zealand. The Zeeland is actually the same thing. Zeeland is the Dutch word for Zeeland. So the castle Zeelandia was actually the headquarters of the Dutch East India Company. Besides the Zeelandia, there's another fort called Provincia, province. So you can see that on this map, that's the lagoon. And then you can see the Zeelandia as well as Provincia. The location of the lagoon is perfect. It was easier, very easy for them to defend themselves. We don't forget, at that stage, there's a lot of Japanese pirates as well. Well, pirates sometimes is a synonym of the merchants. Right? The Japanese arrived in Taiwan, do business in Taiwan. Actually, they set up a little township in Tainan as well. When Dutch arrived, that meant that their right or their benefit was actually influenced. Therefore, there was actually a serious fight between Dutch and the Japanese over the control of Tainan. But Japanese were actually outnumbered and returned. And there was a certain time that the Dutch was not allowed to enter Japan as a retaliation. And also there were Chinese pirates here in this area, and the Dutch would have set up this kind of fort, this kind of castle, to defend themselves. Later on, we will know that the Koxinga, a Chinese general, arrived to Taiwan, and there was actually a serious fight between them, and that took place also in this area. So the map of the Zeelandia was actually very important. So this is another description of the Fort Zeelandia, and now you can see that the construction is different. It was actually the manpower here was actually increased. At that stage, the Dutch East Indian Company has a very strong hold, a center in Jakarta, in the Batavia. And sometimes when they need defense, they will actually call for help, and the fleet will be sent to Tainan, to Zeelandia from Batavia. And so I think the communication then was very quick and swift, and the route must be very busy. Okay. This again a picture of the Fort Zeelandia in the 17th century, and as you can see that somehow ruined. There's a model of Zeelandia built presented recently, showing the when its prime, the Zealandia was actually quite big, with quite a strong capacity. A lot of warehouses were actually built because of the business was really booming. So, now the 1624, the Dutch East India Company was actually advised to come to Taiwan. So the fleet arrived to Taiwan in 1624, and was accompanied by the fleet from Batavia. So they set up a European-style government and collect taxes. They also try to convert the local people to believe in Calvinism, and also they started to teach the Dutch languages in this area. So some of the Aborigines still use some phrases, some words of Dutch. And very recently there was the Dutch delegate to Taiwan was supposed to be retired from his post and go back to Netherlands, but he chose to stay in Taiwan. He felt somehow there should be some connection between the Taiwanese Aborigines and himself. And he showed that what he found in these villages. You know, in Europe there is an instrument to clap the carpet made of rattan, right? Or to clap the carpet. There was very common household utensils in Europe, but this Dutch diplomat found the same thing in the villages in Taiwan, was actually treated and worshipped as a relic of descent. He found this thing very interesting. Right? So there was actually some remnants of the Dutch activities in these original areas, and some of them were still able to recite, to chant the paragraphs of the New Testament in its own language. And this is actually a painting of Zealandia, for Zealandia, showing how it looked like then. So, the very beginning of the Dutch administration started in the southern part of Taiwan, in Tainan area, and didn't reach too far, say at most to the center part of Taiwan. There is a place in Zhanghua nowadays named Wangtian, which means the land of the king. Right? People believe, or historians believe, that this was actually a land, rice paddies cultivated by the Dutch people, administrated by the VOC, by the Dutch East India Company, and that's why it is called the King's Land. So they stayed here in Taiwan for 38 years until 1662. Then was driven away by Kosinga. We will talk about him later. So the Dutch East India Company set up a tax system, schools to teach the people and to teach them to be obedient national subjects. They then Romanized the local language, used alphabets to write down, to spell the local languages. I mean, always talking about languages because they're talking about different languages of the different Aboriginal tribes. And some of the documents were still available, are still kept until nowadays. It is called Xingang writing. I'll show you later. This is a picture of the Xingang chapel that the Dutch priests set up churches here in Madou area. Actually, now we're always talking about the Taiwan. That's at this stage, at this period, is only confined in Tainan area and its suburb surroundings. Like Xingang is actually not far away from now. It's the Tainan city. Have you been to Tainan? Well, if you have been there, then you see, there's a place called Chiganlo. All these monuments left by the Dutch people. Okay. Now we can see that these are so-called Xingang documents. On this side, you can see this is Chinese. Right? And here you can see the alphabet here, spelling the Aboriginal languages. And here, this is actually written. This is a deed, a purchase of land in the Qianlong period. Qianlong was actually in the 18th century, and those land purchased from the Aborigines by the Chinese, they will always have this kind of deeds and written in 2 different languages. And this Xingang document was actually one of the presents, one of the leftover of the Dutch rule over Taiwan. Again, this is another one, Qianlong 30年, the 30th year of Qianlong Emperor. Again, this is a deed by the purchase of the land in the 2 different languages. And for the Taiwanese history, the study of Taiwanese history, this kind of deeds was really important. At least we know the relations between the Chinese and the Aborigines and the Cambrados and so on. So as you can see here, this is a page of the Evangelion, the Matthews. And on the right hand side, you have the Xingang dialect or Xingang language. On the left hand side, there's the Dutch Dan. There's the New Testament translated into the local language. There's the base of the Xingang document. And this picture was actually pictured or drawn by Chinese of the 17th or 18th century. Some of the Chinese travel through Taiwan. They want to search for fortune, they want to search looking for opportunity to make living or to make fortune. When they travel all over the southern part of Taiwan, some of them actually write down what they heard about Taiwan, what they know about Taiwan. There's a book called Dongfanji. It's a canon of the Eastern barbarians, of written by a person named Chen. He arrived in Taiwan in the 18th century, pictured a lot of things, and the writer took record of a lot of things, of the activities of the Chinese, of the Aborigines. For example, here was actually how the Aborigines dressed themselves, how they hunted, and of course there's the Sika deer I mentioned was founded there for the local people. That was actually one of the best game they can get. The Sika deer is very valuable from the horn. You know, the Chinese treated horn as a very good medicine, and this fur, the skin also, and the flesh, and so on. So the hunting for the deer is a very important activity. And then the Dutch East Indian Company collect tax. Whoever hunts a Sika deer will have to pay such and such money. Right? Just like the normal situation in Europe. You have to pay for the hunting, you have to pay for the fishing. So there was the same system here in Taiwan. So this is the sika deer for exportation. The Dutch colonists used Aborigines to hunt the native Formosan sika deer, which was really abundant in Taiwan. Nowadays, the sika deer is actually an endangered species. It's almost gone. But at that stage, as I said, it was more than enough. Then the pelt of the deer was shipped and processed, which was really a very important commodity for the Europeans. While the Dutch inhabited in the southern part of Taiwan, is the Philippines. In the Philippines, the Spanish in the Philippines tried to reach Taiwan as well, because they still think that the trade in Southeast Asia, as well as between Southeast Asia and East Asia, was very important. So they also wanted to set up a trade center in Taiwan, and this time they choose the northern tip of Taiwan. Nowadays, Danshui. So, have you been to Danshui? Well, you can see there was actually a historical monument there, but it's called the residence of the British Chancellor, the Danshui Ling Shi Guan, was actually a building built in the 19th century, between the 18th and 19th century by the British. But the location there was actually a fort of the Spanish merchants, and still some part of the Spanish fort still remained. And on this picture, you can see there's a lighthouse in Sandiaojiao. We have to notice take note of this name, Sandiaojiao, which means San Diego, right? The term Sandiaojiao, it means nothing. It's actually literally pronunciation of San Diego. Of course, you can see from the name, San Diego means actually shows that the Spanish was actually here. So they built up a Fort San Salvador and Fort San Diego, and all these activities proved that the Spanish were actually interested in this area, but the activity was actually short-lived, and because very soon the Dutch found out the intention of the Spanish people and decided to drive the Spanish out of Taiwan, because the Dutch then thought that Taiwan was actually to their exclusive rights. So we can see in this picture that this is the location of Salvador, Fort Santo Domingo, the Danshui, and this is the Santiago. Right? And this is the area that's controlled by the Dutch, the Zeelandia and so on, because it was actually very easy for them to reach here by boat. As you notice, there was actually central mountains here. It was very hard to pass. And this area was actually all the mountainous area dwelt by the Aborigines. So that's why the Dutch, it was very hard for the Dutch to reach any further northbound. So they stayed in this area. This is the Dadu, that's in Taichung nowadays. So this is the Wangtian area I'm talking about. Nowadays in Zhanghua. It was easy for them to go down southbound, to go to Urambi and come up. So this is the Dutch colony, and this is the Spanish colony. And there was no man's land dwelt by most of the Taiwanese Aborigines. And it was believed there was actually an organized authority here called 大陆王国, but little was actually known about this little authority, and in the Taiwanese history, it was really of little importance. But from this picture, we can see that it's China. Some of the Chinese will actually come close to the road. This is the Quemoy, Jinmen. Nowadays belong to Taiwan. But it was easy for them to go this way, to cross the Taiwan Straits, come to this area. And this is the hilly part of Taiwan. Like Taipei, hardly any flat land for agriculture, for farming. So it was of less interest for the Chinese. They would rather come this way. And interesting enough, even in the 18th century, 19th century, for the Chinese, for the Taiwanese, to go, if you want to go from Tainan, the southern tip of Taiwan, to the northern part of Taiwan, what would you do? You would actually sail this way. It would be easier to pass. So the Taiwanese would want to buy, to say the Taiwanese in the northern part of Taiwan, if they want to buy the rice produced in the southern part of Taiwan, it would be easier to go this way. So the central area was actually very hard to pass there. Also, it was very hard to pass this way. So there was actually, if you are familiar with Taiwanese sightseeing spot, you can see that there was actually called Fish Road. From Yilan, if you want to go to Taipei, it will be easier and more advisable to go this way, inland, rather than to go past by boat, because it was really dangerous, stormy, and with a lot of cliff. So it would be easier to go by boat, by foot, on foot. That's the situation in Taiwan. And this is actually the what we saw, the some Domingo, the Hong Mao Cheng. Hong Mao means red hair. For Chinese, any Europeans look like red-headed. Don't know why. Some of you are not, even darker than usual. But for the Chinese, we just call them Hong Mao, red-haired. And this term was actually very popular. How do you call the cement in Chinese? Do you know? In Taiwanese? Hong Mao Tu, Amun Tong. It's the clay from the red-handed. That's the cement. Right? So the Hong Mao Tu means the fort dwelled by the red-handed. That was actually one of the most important historical monuments in Taipei area. And have you been to there? That's it, consular. This is actually not the main building of the consular. Was actually the Spanish part of the consular. It was actually built, first of all, built in the 17th century by the Spanish. There was ruins for a long time. So then the Dutch people, then the British consular started to rebuild this place using this site. So we should have some time to go there. It was really advisable. That was easy to reach. If you take the MRT, just go down to the end station and just walk, say, 10, 20 minutes, you will be in the dance training Shuguan. Very interesting. You can see that the cell, how the prisoner was kept. You can see the view was magnificent from the consulate to oversee the river mouth of Tanshui River. Very interesting. So the Dutch colonial activity actually attracted a lot of migrants from mainland China, right? So the first influx of the migrants from mainland China came according to the invitation of the Dutch merchants and traders, right, they started to come to Taiwan. They want to buy the goods produced in Taiwan, and sometimes they even buy the license for hunting for the sika deer. And some of them were actually criminals. They arrived in Taiwan to escape from the Chinese authority. And as I mentioned, most of the Han Chinese arrived in Taiwan were young single males, and some of them stayed in Taiwan. And of course, not everyone come to Taiwan will get rich. Some of them were actually found themselves in a very poor situation. And in the local rhymes, in the local songs, the folklores, there was some kind of songs to advise people not to come to Taiwan. There's even a song called 劝君莫入鬼门关, advising you not to come to the gates of hell, which can be very dangerous to come to Taiwan. But another saying, popular saying in Taiwan was that, or in southern part of Fujian, was actually the Taiwanese money piled up so high that even covered your ankle. Right? Because Taiwanese imkaba. So you can get very easily rich in Taiwan. Well, this kind of contradictory sayings reflects the people's expectation of Taiwan. But certainly, there's some kind of certain danger was actually involved. Just like a lot of ships, boats were actually wrecked by the typhoon. And the passengers didn't even know how Taiwan should look like. They were already killed halfway. Well, this kind of story suddenly happens. Just like I don't know how many of them, how many of the Scottish or Irish immigrants were killed en route to Australia, for example, or to any other colonies. And even if you arrive to Taiwan, it doesn't mean that you can make yourself rich because of the disease. The tropical disease in Taiwan can be very serious. You know, well, some of you must have been advised to get some immune, the injection before you arrive to Taiwan, right? What was actually advised to get? What kind of disease? Tuberculosis. Tuberculosis.
Hepatitis A, B.
Hepatitis.
A and B. Yeah. DTP. Diphthery. Tetanus.
Polio. Yeah. And so on. What else did you get?
Rabies. They said
Rabies.
There's no rabies.
There's no. Well, one cannot be too careful. They get all the shots in. There's no polio in Taiwan either, right? Hepatitis was very serious, but I don't think nowadays people can get hepatitis so easily. And tetanus, I don't know, perhaps it still exists everywhere.
Well, tetanus you have to get it reviewed every 10 years.
Every 10 years. All right. So Taiwan is not as dangerous as any other countries. Certainly, huh?
Well, it's an island, so everything's isolated.
Well, it was isolated enough. Therefore, you know, the dengue fever, for example, the dengue fever is now still again kind of endangering Taiwanese lives. But for a long, long time, the dengue fever was actually disappeared from Taiwan, especially under Japanese rule. And because nowadays the tourism again brought the dengue fever back to Taiwan. Any other, for example, the yellow fever, for example, this is a disease that was never heard in Taiwan. And I remember once I read that a tourist fell ill in the airport, and the local doctor was summoned to give any kind of help. But the doctor didn't realize what kind of disease was that. Never saw this kind of disease, the yellow fever. And but mind you that before the Japanese arrival, Japanese actually did a lot to Taiwanese sanitary. Before that, the Taiwanese the sanitary situation was really not optimal because a lot of disease actually very popular here in Taiwan, diarrhea, malaria, and so on. I remember when I was a child, in the school, everybody was forced to get injection against cholera. Nowadays we don't hardly hear any kind of cholera. But during this time, the tropical disease was really very popular in Taiwan, very common. So 1895, when Japanese landing army arrived in Taiwan, I think 1/3 of them fell ill because of the tropical disease. That's why Japanese were determined to kind of fight against the tropical disease. And after 30 years, 40 years activity, the sanitary situation improved a lot. And another thing was actually the Aborigines, for example, when they were scattered, living in these different remote areas, they had hardly any kind of contact with each other. Then any kind of disease will actually be confined locally, was actually okay. So I was often asked about the population of the Taiwanese local Aborigines. It was really hard to answer this question because a certain investigation, carry out an investigation was actually very difficult, and B, I think the Taiwanese Aboriginal population was very big, right? But during the Japanese colonial time, Japanese forced the Aborigines to move down to the lower land. Then the contact was more frequent. A lot of Taiwanese Aborigines fell ill because of the contagious disease, and population declined, shrink very easily. So therefore the migrants from mainland China to Taiwan, they were actually endangered by the tropical disease. I think most popular were actually diarrhea, typhus, cholera, malaria, and so on. I don't think the hepatitis was actually a very serious thing there. But nowadays, neither. But I think 40 years ago, 30 years ago, hepatitis was really very serious. I think that was due to the Chinese culinary habits, that everybody's kind of poking with chopsticks from the same pot, right? That can pass on anything you like. So that was actually the common problem of any colonies or new settlement. That young people arrive, young people die without known to the relatives in the homeland. Right? Just like usually you can see these kind of films. For example, there was a film called Thornbird. Right? The situation in Australia at the very beginning, the people died very easily. Only then we realize it's how fragile the human life can be. It's get killed anywhere, any places, of any different causes. And the migrants from China to Taiwan, they arrived in a huge amount, but few of them managed to survive, and even few of them managed to get rich. But still, Taiwan was actually one of the aim of for the immigration. Then we'll actually come to the end stage of the Dutch East Indian Company, because someone arrived, the Kosinga. Kosinga was actually a very funny name. This name was actually used by the Dutch people, which was actually meant Gokse. Gokse, Taiwanese, as Gok is actually country, nation. Sing is actually the family name, surname. Ga is actually the Lord. The Kosinga meant or means the Lord who bears the national family name or imperial name, imperial family name. Well, his first name was actually, his last name was actually Zheng. His father Zheng Zhilong was actually a pirate, but when the Ming Dynasty was not able to defeat him, then they worked out something to pacify him by offering the father Zheng Zhilong a proper job, a proper title, and even allow his son, his families, to get high ranks. So therefore, the Zheng Zhilong took up the offer and worked with the Ming Dynasty. That's why his son was also allowed to visit the National University there in Nanjing. And the emperor, the Ming emperor, allowed the Zheng family to bear the family name of the emperor. Therefore, he was actually bestowed with the name Zhu. Zhu was actually the Ming Dynasty's imperial name. So that's why he was actually called Kosinga, the lord with a national or imperial family name. He was actually a military leader towards the end of the Ming Dynasty to fight against the Qing Chinese or the Manchu Chinese. There was actually a long story. At the end of 17th century, mid of the 17th century, as I mentioned, the Manchus of the nowadays the Dongbei, the Manchuria, started to rebel, to fight against the Ming Dynasty, and the Ming Dynasty was not able to defend themselves, and gradually the Beijing was taken by the Ming Dynasty, by the Manchus. So the Kaiser, the emperor, hung himself in Beijing. Rest of his family arrived southern part of Taiwan, and some of the loyal Ming generals wanted to fight against the Manchu again still, and enthroned some of the family members of the late emperor. Like you have later four different, so we call it the four different kings of the South Ming Dynasty, and those loyal generals will actually use any one of the family members of the late emperor to kind of attract people to fight against the Manchus with them. One of the leaders was actually the Zheng Chenggong, or the Kosinga. As I mentioned, his father was actually a pirate. Zheng Chenggong was born in Japan. His mother was Japanese. Because at that stage, you can see that there was actually a free highway between Nagasaki, between Japan and the Philippines. These waters were actually very busy. And some of the Chinese pirates, they will actually sail as far as to Japan. And they have their stronghold there, they have their base there. And Zheng Chenggong was one of the parents holding a center in Nagasaki. So he married a local woman and had several sons, offsprings. But when he took up the offer of the Ming dynasty to go to the capital of the Ming to get the office of a general, he took his firstborn. There was the Zheng Chenggong with him. And when the Ming generals was fighting against the Qing dynasty, some of them were actually destroyed, and some of them again surrendered to the Manchus. Zheng Zhilong was actually again surrendered himself to Qing dynasty, but Zheng Chenggong, his son, refused to do so. So he led an army to fight against the Manchus again on the coastal area. Yes.
So the Manchus are the
Qing. Yeah.
That's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
When they established themselves as a dynasty, they called themselves Qing. Before the Qing dynasty was actually established, they called themselves Manchus. All right. So Zheng Chenggong was defeated again, over and over again in China, in the coastal area, by the Manchus. So he decided to find another place to establish himself. So a lot of Chinese returned from Taiwan to China, to Fujian, suggested, okay, there's a best place for you to go, Taiwan. Well, at that stage, Taiwan meant Tainan. And Zheng Chenggong decided to accept this offer to sail to Taiwan. But certainly the Dutch East India Company were quite aware of this kind of situation, of this kind of development. And therefore, for Zealandia asked for help from Batavia. So therefore, Batavia sent a huge fleet to Zealandia to help the East India Company, help the governor in Taiwan to defend themselves. And Zheng Chenggong realized that and decided to talk, to make peace with the Dutch East India Company by asking or by demanding the Dutch East India Company to provide Zheng Chenggong with weaponry, which the Dutch East India Company did accordingly. So Zheng Chenggong pretended to be satisfied, returned to a coastal area of Taiwan, of China, and was really expensive for the fleet to station in Taiwan. So therefore, the East Indian Company's fleet returned to Batavia. As soon as the fleet returned, Zheng Chenggong led his army to Taiwan. So they took Zheng Chenggong and his men took Zealandia, or took the Dutch governor by surprise, and that's the end of the Dutch colonization in Taiwan. Shall we have another 10 minutes break? All right.